Tip 2, probably this one is the most important. Adjust to your audience. That determines the structure, the length, whether you use plain English or technical English, also the illustrations you use. Lawyers love cases. Economists, they don't care about cases normally. They care about models and more abstract ideas. Sociologists will want to hear about empirical evidence. So depending on your audience, of course, your presentation will shift a lot. And here I also have to say something about culture, maybe, because the tips I'm giving, they are from my perspective. A Belgian who studied in Japan, in the US, in Belgium, and who has spoken at conferences, usually conferences in Europe, in the US, in Japan, other places in Asia. I guess a good presentation is, the standard for a good presentation is different in each country. And for instance, this first tip, the first 3 minutes, there was a time I took this to an extreme. I was like, when I started the presentation, I would immediately say something like, my main message. In Japan, people don't seem to do that. In Japan, it's common to thank the organizers, maybe say something humble, like, oh, I didn't prepare enough for this presentation, or I'm just a beginner in this field, but I'm trying to share some ideas, and then start. Who am I to say that that is wrong or not good? I mean, that's a cultural thing. So yeah, that's also part of adjust to your audience. Not all these tips may always be true. Yeah, they're just my personal view, and they're influenced by culture. Tip 3, practice the delivery. And what do I mean with this? I think, especially when you talk in a non-native language. For instance, when I have to present in Japanese, I spend way too much time on my slides compared to practicing my speech, because my speech in Japanese is not so good. I need to practice it out loud to have a good delivery. But I tend to focus on my slides, and I barely practice. And then when I have to speak in Japanese, it's not very good. There's stuttering, and I'm like, oh, or my sentence changes. So I guess, especially if it's your non-native language, and if you're struggling with the language, practice the delivery. Do a dry run. Do a practice session from start to finish. If you can record yourself with your iPad, great. That helps. You can look at yourself. This will also give you the timing, right? Because especially in Japan, time is so important. They really don't like it if you go longer. Internationally, that's kind of more accepted than the norm. Everyone always talks longer than they're allowed. But in Japan, they're very strict on timing, and they really appreciate it if you can stick to the time. So by practicing, by doing it, you know your exact timing, and you've said it, and this will help you. I know we have limited time, so spend less time on the slides and more on this practicing. That at least that helps for me when I have to speak in Japanese. Tip 4, keep slides short. That's also a tip you will hear from many speakers internationally. Maybe it's not true for Japan. I know a lot of Japanese colleagues in my field . My personal view is, well, if everything is on the slide, why is there a presentation? Why can't I just read the slide? There's something called a poster conference. They do that a lot in medical science or in engineering. You have a poster with your points, and then you can look at and read the poster. That's a different format. If it's a symposium or a Kinkyukai and there's a presentation, I want to hear the person talk, not read the slide. I don't want to constantly read the slides. I want to engage with the person. But I know a lot of my colleagues in my field do things differently. And I guess, yeah, maybe that's a cultural thing. At least with a full slide, even if you haven't understood anything of what the person says, at home, you can read the slides and think back of what he wanted to say, or you can refer to it or footnote it. So yeah, but my personal tip is keep slides short. And so how do you do that? yeah, often the way of phrasing, how do you survive the zombie apocalypse? Well, you need to find friends who can look out for you. That's important. Try to put this in a shorter way. Find allies. Stay too long in one place means you'll be a target. You can phrase that shorter by saying keep moving. And so try to put things in a short way. Even if this makes it hard to understand, it will force the audience to listen to you because they will see, okay, find allies, what does he mean? And then the person explains it, and then you will have people who listen to you. So that's my personal approach, is to try to keep slides short. Tip 5. This is the dilemma. Do you make a script, like a document with all the sentences that you will read, or do you talk spontaneously? I think Tamura Sensei, you said in your last one, you prefer spontaneously, right? Of course, we all make an outline. I think outline is really important so that you have a structure, you know where you're going. But normally, if you have slides, you already kind of have your outline through the slides. Then, do you write a script? Do you use a script or not? Well, if you can, don't use a script. If your language level is good enough, don't use a script because you'll be more spontaneous. People like to hear spoken language. If you write it down, somehow the sentences become longer and it's harder to understand. You'll have more eye contact. You'll be closer to your audience. You can see your audience, whether they're asleep or whether they don't understand. And if you read, all of that is much more difficult. And it also takes less time. I mean, writing a script, it's a lot of time, no? Every sentence, if you have to give a lecture of 1 hour, imagine. But okay, with a script, you feel more secure. You will not stutter. You will just read it. And yeah, you're sure that everything you wanted to say, you will have said. You'll be complete and you'll be accurate. So if you can, no script. Okay, then finally, some tips on how to deliver. My personal view is that it's much better to stand than to sit. So if they offer the possibility, stand. People just are more attentive to people who stand than to sit. Sit means you're like that, you're passive. Nothing's moving. If you stand, you can move, you can keep the attention longer. Change the volume of your voice. I also forget that. I'm loud all the time. Some of my Japanese students, they're silent all the time. That's not good. You need to combine them. Sometimes silent, and sometimes you want to stress something and be more loud. And that change is very effective. I should put this at the start of all my presentations because I'm too loud all the time. No, you need variation. That keeps your audience alive. Finally, body language. Well, maybe this is also cultural, but my view is let it flow, let your body language come, because it's part of communication. Communication is not just the words, it's also your hands, your facial expression. It helps convey the message. So why not use it? How can you be so stupid? You only use your mouth if you have so much more that you can use to communicate. It may be a cultural thing. I know a lot of people, certainly in Asia, who are very zen, who don't move, who also don't show much facial expression. Maybe they think when I speak, I'm ridiculous. Maybe they think I'm like a rakugo, Japanese comic storytelling. Maybe they think that's ridiculous. Yeah. But isn't rakugo fun to watch? Isn't it entertaining? So to me, if it comes naturally, don't hold it back. Just use as much body language as you can. I think it helps. Also for non-native speakers, or especially for non-native speakers, you cannot be perfect with language, so you can help compensate by using your body language. And then this is the final tip, and I hope we can put it in practice after this. Yeah, practice. Hopefully get feedback. This is not so easy. Certainly in Japan, people rarely give honest feedback, but maybe your supervisor or your colleagues will give you honest feedback. Yeah, that was boring, or that was too long, or that was too fast. Honest feedback, very good. And then try again and practice. Do as many presentations as you can.